It is a Thursday edition of the Burning Issue here on the Happy Word of 5FM Radio on 8. Sincere apologies for starting the program late. This was due to circumstances beyond our guests' control in the studio, and so the program is on. Well, let me also quickly remind you that we are not only live on 5FM Radio, but we are also live on our partner radio stations, and we are live on Tuta FM in Mansa, and of course covering the rest of Luapula province. We're grateful that you found time to tune in. Also live on iWave FM radio in Chingola, covering Copper Belt. And thank you also for tuning in to this particular Thursday edition of the Burning Issue. Also live on Mchinga Radio, that is in Chinsali, covering the rest of Mchinga province. Thank you very much and welcome to the Burning Issue. Spice FM in Kabwe is tuned in, and we are grateful for tuning in. Again, sincere apologies for starting the program late. Otherwise, we are live and also live on our Facebook page. That's 5FM Radio Zambia. Now, I'm your host, Zachariah Banda. Now, today we have an interesting discussion. We will definitely be discussing on a number of issues, including the fight against corruption under the UPND government, but also food security in this country and many other topics. And of course, our guest this morning is Honourable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament for Lukasha constituency, but he's also the Chairperson of the Patriotic Front Legal Committee. Honourable, welcome to the program and thank you for coming.
Good morning, Zach. Thank you very much. I just want to echo your apologies to the listeners. I'm late, and this is due to some other very serious commitment that I had. I had to excuse myself from an important meeting because I thought this engagement is very important. Thank you, and I'm grateful that you gave me the opportunity to come and speak to the people.
Great. How are the people of Lukasha doing?
The people of Lucasha are very fine. Of course, amidst the challenges that we are facing,
Right.
trying to get around, our CDF projects and several other projects that we're doing.
Mm.
But I must let you know that I was speaking to the Minister of Agriculture yesterday.
Okay.
We've got plenty maize in Lucasha.
I was about to ask what
Yes.
is the food security like for in Lukasha?
People are actually complaining that
They have too much maize.
The FRA is taking too long to come and collect their maize.
Is it?
I was actually trying to encourage the minister to ask FRA possibly to give us additional satellite depots for people
Right.
to collect maize, because farmers have to travel distances, and some of them have to cross rivers using canoes to go and take the closest depot that is available. But previously, what used to happen is that when you know that there's enough maize that has been produced in the neighborhood, you create a satellite depot so that people can travel very close distances to go and sell the maize.
Yeah.
This also helps you to avoid briefcase businessmen who, as you are aware,
Yes.
are already within the northern enclave collecting maize and storing it, so that when the press appreciates, they're the ones who are going to come and sell to the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think this is something we're going to come to talk about in detail once we deal with the issue of food security.
Indeed.
Yes.
I know that you are the chairperson for the Patriotic Front Legal Committee, and it's
Yes.
very important that we discuss the legalities around what's happening in the party.
Yes.
What is the situation like now, in as far as the Central Committee, which we understand was dissolved by the by in this case, quote unquote, President Maize,
Yes.
and also we do understand that there's an SG who has imposed himself. There's another president who has imposed himself.
Yes.
What is the situation like, Patriotic Front legally? Your committee should be very busy
Well,
with the legality issues.
when we were feted to the drama that took place on the 24th of October 2023,
Yeah.
I think I came to this radio station.
Yes, you did.
And I said, we do not deal with matters of leadership as child's play. But I made a very clear call at that time. I demanded, of the government at that time,
Right.
that you cannot allow, or you cannot tolerate people that decide to just go against the wind and create an environment that causes confusion in the political party, and you embrace it and you grab it like a relay and begin to run with it as if you are part of the problem, when you are actually creating even a bigger problem. You know, I lamented why at that time, you know, the Deputy Inspector of Police became very busy on a Sunday, 25 October 2020, registering the so-called new office bearers for the Patriotic Front, collecting, as it were, their fingerprints on a Sunday evening, you know, and facilitating the Registrar of Societies to try and change registered, office bearers for the Patriotic Front. I said that was wrong. I went ahead and said of the president that the manner in which he was embracing, you know, the new leadership within the Patriotic Front, you know, especially the person that then turns out to be the leader of opposition at that time, going all over with him, encouraging him to be strong. I said that was wrong for the president to do, because not only was the president abrogating the constitution, but he was also trying to create an environment that was going to create a dangerous trajectory, which which nobody can control. So we are at a stage now where what I had predicted is actually what has happened. But from the Patriotic Front perspective, and I would like members to listen to me as a chairperson for legal and constitutional affairs, we don't have anything to worry about. You know, this is the machination of the government trying to create discontentment within the Patriotic Front. And now you can see that the very players who were embraced by the government have now differed on their own. These firings and everything that are taking place now have only happened because, you know, government tolerated unlawfulness. The government tolerated, in fact, not even tolerated, they encouraged and participated actively in creating this discontentment that you are seeing. Because if the Deputy Inspector of Police did not work on a Sunday night to collect those so-called signatures of office bearers, you know, if the Registrar of Society who was there was strong enough, that young lady who had to leave her job because she had wanted to ensure that everything is done in accordance with the law, if she had not been removed and replaced with this compromised Registrar of Society, whose first assignment was to further the illegalities that was happening in the Patriotic Front, if those things had not happened, who is going to face this embarrassment? Quite frankly, it must be the government. Because now, you know, the individual who had been appointed by Mao Sampa emerged as a victor in that kitchen conference that they had. And then the government embraced that and participated in doing everything to make sure that those people were given some sort of legitimacy. It's not even legitimate. Some sort of legitimacy. Now their very blue-eyed boy has become a victim of a kick out of the institution simply because he has renewed his mind and discovered what was happening was wrong, and he would like to see if they can remedy the mistakes they had made. You know, and then he becomes a victim of an ejection from the party. It's surprising. I was saying the other day that it's the first time I'm seeing that you hire Zach, a servant, a garden boy, and you make him, you know, comfortable in your home by giving him additional assignments, including leader of opposition and other things. And then one day he just wakes up and says, I have ejected you from the party. You are the master. Where has it ever happened that a master has been kicked out of his position by a servant? But this is the kind of lawlessness that I had pleaded with everybody, including the presidency, not to encourage, because when you encourage these things, what then comes out is the challenges that we are facing right now. But you were saying, what is the status of the Patriotic Front? Let me tell you what the status is. The clear status of the Patriotic Front is that from the time that we recalibrated our leadership on the 28th of October 2023, that's a leadership that we have right now. Edgar Chagwa Lungu is the president of the Patriotic Front, at least until the time that we go to the convention. There's no brainer about it. It's a very simple thing, because Edgar was elected. Isia was elected before the last general election in 2021. He had a tenure up to the next convention, which has not taken place. So when we saw the connivance between the government then and the people that are unfortunate, who are my brothers, I can tell you that. Miles is my younger brother. You know, Chaminga is my younger brother, but they became renegade. So when we discovered that these people had become renegade, we tried to recalibrate the party to avoid the lawlessness that we are experiencing right now. We called the president back from retirement and said, look, come and sit in your position until we go to the convention. So the current status that we have is that Edgar is a president, you know, given he's a vice president. We have all central committee in place, you know, until at least we go to the next convention. This is the real Patriotic Front. Others may want not to see it as real, but it's real. You can't deny a fact that exists. This is what we put in place, and our members are just encouraged to rally behind this president, you know, until we are guided by the general conference, which is going to be called to recreate a new leadership. You will hear even the phone calls that are going to come. Anybody from UPN to be telling, oh, but Miles is the president, this one is the president. That is not the fact. But you need now to pay attention to the confusion that arises when you participate directly and expressly into some form of unconstitutionality and some form of illegality to recreate a leadership simply because it suits you as a party which is in government, and it seeks to destroy the party that's supposed to be offering you checks and balances. We are destroying our democracy. And this is a cry that I've made so many times. I'm really hopeful that from the lessons we're learning right now, and I'm glad, Zach, that many stakeholders have risen against this unconstitutionality. We've been given encouraging words, redeeming voices being spoken to everywhere. I'm really hoping that those who are speaking on these redeeming voices can help us to fight this unconstitutionality so that we can return this country to sanity. Because believe it or not, in the absence of organized opposition, the UPND cannot match the Zambian people in the rise. It is not going to happen. They need an organized opposition so that we can be, right now, we've spent the last 1 year telling our members to calm down because we are trying to resolve these matters. If you've seen what is happening, every time we are hit below the belt, we go to court. We are hit below the belt and we keep calming our people down. Why? Because we are an organized opposition. In the absence of organized opposition, you are going to have a Gen Z coming onto the platform in this country. Once we get to that level, it will be chaotic. I was one of the students that rose in 1990, together with the rest of Zambia students. By the time we were leaving that revolution, nobody had control of it until MMD was created. That's when we came to control the country, and the country came back to sanity. And at that time, Zambians had even resolved that, look, Kaunda and UNIP are gone. They did everything to prevent things, and it happened. You need organized opposition. We were in power for 10 years. We had organized opposition from the UPND. We never tried to interfere with their internal affairs. But we knew that we needed them to give us a checks and balances, just like they need us right now to give them checks and balances. And they need all of us who are in Parliament.
Now, let's go to Parliament now that you've mentioned it. You've spoken about all the illegalities that were taking place at the hands of this government, as you allege. It went into Parliament, right? And when it got into Parliament, we saw a leader of opposition being appointed from, obviously, like you mentioned, from the Maize faction.
Yes.
And everything else looked like the process was normal, very legal for Parliament. And this is in Parliament where laws are made. And now we are left to wonder what really happens in as far as a leader of opposition is concerned, especially assuming that office.
I'm surprised that you call that legal. Extremely surprised, because there is nothing.
I believe there shouldn't be anything illegal tolerated in Parliament.
Well, unfortunately, it was tolerated even when it was illegal. Look, this is not life as usual. Okay, what you are seeing in government, or in Parliament rather, was a culmination of the deceptive concept that was put in place at the beginning of 23. Meeting that took place, the 24th of October 2020, that meeting that took place is what created now the purported leadership that you saw in Parliament. Okay, I have argued radio station and elsewhere where I've spoken. I've said,
what do you think should have stopped Parliament from putting Chisanga as leader of opposition?
Read the Constitution. The Constitution only in the middle as a referee. There are umpires basically to see that the business in the Parliament goes on, properly and appropriately. There are two very important people, and the law is very clear. The law recognizes the importance of the Republican president in this country, and it places a responsibility on the Republican president to appoint, and the president actually appoints physically the vice president as leader of government business in Parliament. That's why you see that everything that happens on the UPND side in government is around my mother, the vice president, because she's the leader of government business in Parliament. If she walks out of Parliament even for 10 minutes, 1 hour, 3 days, whatever, she has to designate to the Speaker of the National Assembly who is going to be leader of government business in Parliament in her absence. But the appointment of the vice president is made by the president. So the president of the Republic of Zambia is in Parliament through the image and person of the vice president in Parliament. That's Article 74.1.
Right.
Article 74.2 designates the position and office of leader of opposition. And it clearly states that the leader of the opposition is going to be elected by members of Parliament of the largest opposition political party in Parliament. It's clear, black and white in there. So there must be an election of somebody who becomes the leader of opposition in Parliament. And the nation may need to know the leader of opposition in Parliament is very important, because even his status is one of a cabinet portfolio. He is even given benefits. He actually operates like a minister in Parliament, leading all of us who are in opposition. When we went into Parliament in 2021,
right.
we sat as members of Parliament, in fact, assisted by Central Committee of the Patriotic Front then, and elected Brian Mundubire as leader of opposition. And that note was given to the Speaker of the National Assembly. That's why Brian was designated leader of opposition for the whole period that he was in Parliament. Okay? In fact, you must even know that recently there was a court decision, because in their quest to try and legitimize the wrongs that they've been doing, our colleagues, the UPND have used all manner of engagements, including going to court. There was a court case that was before the Constitutional Court recently, where somebody was questioning elect a leader of opposition in Parliament.
Right.
The only person who's chosen is a leader. Mandate is given to the Republican president, but for leader of opposition, you actually do an election. He shall be elected to members of Parliament of the largest political party in government, and that's how Brian Mundubire has been sitting in that position up to today. Okay, the matter that went to court confirmed that position. Somebody was questioning, in fact, they was even saying, look, this man was wrongly put in the office of leader of opposition. He must be made to account. First, the court must determine that he was wrongly put in the office of leader of opposition, and he must even refund the monies that he earned in his office, in his position as leader of opposition. The Constitutional Court, reading the Constitution clearly, said that he didn't find anything wrong with the way Brian was elected. It is in plain black and white. So the court has even confirmed that position. So what you saw happen with the indication that Chavinga is now the new leader, all that were unconstitutional breaches. So, but they were endorsed because, like I said, I've actually argued many times that for me, and somebody has to convince me otherwise. For me, I know that the UPND is on a crusade, to destroy the Patriotic Front. Okay, and the people have argued with me, and others have even said, look, even if PF did it to MMD, even MMD did it to UNIP, frankly speaking, how can we run a country like that? How can we agree that because MMD, killed UNIP and PF killed MMD, UPND must have the right to kill Patriotic Front? Of course, some pundits in the UPND are saying, no, we are wrongly accusing them, but we have presented evidence that clearly shows that these people are determined to crush the Patriotic Front. Even that case that went to court on Brian Mundubire, it must have been somebody who was sponsored, quite frankly, by anybody else. Say, look, let's go and get this question determined. Fortunately for Brian Front, the court said, look, this man was properly appointed. He's supposed to.
So what does that mean? What is the status quo in Parliament with regards that?
In real terms, if we respect the Constitution, in real terms, if we respect the mandate of the Constitutional Court to guide the nation on what is constitutional and what is not constitutional, we should have respected that decision of the Constitutional Court, and we should have made reversals in Parliament and put Brian back in his office.
So reversals have not been
They haven't taken place.
Are you questioning that? What is the situation?
You see, we're dealing with much bigger problems of existentiality, in Parliament as Patriotic Front. I think we have a bigger problem to deal with.
But does the member of Parliament who is in that position, despite the interpretation by Concord about that surrounds leader of opposition, is the member of Parliament not respecting that decision as well?
Which member of Parliament? The one
in this case, yes.
Now? Well, he needs to speak for himself. But if you've seen what he has done now, he's not only leader of opposition, he's even declared himself the president of Patriotic Front. Look, I don't want to talk about my younger brother. There are people that are engaging with him. I wouldn't jeopardize whatever they're engaging. But I want to make the statement that insofar as this constitution is concerned, the only person who can legitimately sit in the office of leader of opposition currently is Brian Mundubire. Not only was he elected by us, the court even made it, didn't say anything wrong in the manner he was put in that office. So if we are respecters of the Constitution, as we should be, he should be allowed to walk back into that office and begin to mobilize the opposition as we continue to give credible checks and balances to Parliament. If you've seen now what is happening in Parliament, I mean, this is the only Parliament that is supposed to have 2 sessions by 16 hours sometimes. Because why? The opposition is in a complete state of disarray. There's no leader of opposition who is actually worth his salt. There's no opposition, whip who can whip the members. There's no deputy whip who can. All of these have been removed. So you can't. But it's part of a distraction, like I said, which we must avoid.
But as chairman for the legal committee of the Patriotic Front, this is of your interest.
Of course it is.
You must.
That's why I keep yapping about it.
Indeed. and what my expectations are that you would actually take this matter legally to court, probably.
Well, these are matters in the offing. I don't want We had meetings yesterday.
Okay.
I didn't even sleep. I can tell you that. I mean, we are now beginning to look afresh at how, we need to conduct our affairs as I'll tell you what we did. We were whipped at the beginning of Parliament. Brian and Stephen Kampiongo, who were leaders of the Patriotic Front in government, said, look, gentlemen, to the nation, we want to offer credible checks and balances to this government. So there are things that we have to resolve before we take steps about them. And quite frankly, if you've seen, our opposition is much more organized than whatever you have seen in that Parliament. Sometimes even when we show revolt, it's because we have gotten to a stage where we have no other option. But we have given credible checks and balances. We are organized, around the leaders of opposition. But our thinking now is that we need to re-engage and find out how. Because how can you explain the fact that 9 people can lose a seat on one stroke of a signature by somebody sitting who is supposed to be pronouncing something only on a point of order? We are now realizing how committed our colleagues are to destroying the Patriotic Front, and we take steps that are supposed to start protecting our position. So these meetings we've been having are all strategic. I can't give you all the details, but I'm thinking that you watch what is happening in the next couple of days. Some steps are going to be taken to protect our position, including getting determinations on how we need to be able to be given the opportunity to provide checks and balances in Parliament.
Now, I would like to engage you also on national matters in this case. I mean, we have the Financial Intelligence Center report recently released, and I think what is coming out strongly is the transaction involving a company that was registered within a year in 2023 last year, and to supply government equipment at $21 million, and an upfront payment 4 months later was made of $5.6 million. And these reports are coming out now at a time when this country is undergoing, first of all, challenges of food security. We are asking the international community to help us, but they are seeing transactions of this nature. Do they believe us? What is your comment? How then do we justify our poverty currently as a result of drought?
Our poverty is self-made. Our poverty is self-made. I mean, I feel sorry for the Zambians, and sincerely so. Zambians, gave a blanket approval to the UPND when they voted for them into office. Zambians would have wanted to do what they did in 1991 and in 2011. Get confident that we have changed government. We have now replaced, the previous government with men and women of impeccable character who are going to help us to drive the country forward. That's what citizens are supposed to do when you change government. But Zambians, I can say without any fear of condemnation, that Zambians are disappointed with what the UPND has turned out to be. And this is a sincere position. On the bus, listen to the Zambians. Go into government offices, listen to Zambians. Go anywhere on platform, go on social media, listen to Zambians are disappointed. You have singled out this particular transaction because it's very fresh in your mind and in the minds of Zambians. But for me, this is a culmination of what we've been saying as the Patriotic Front, about the fight against corruption. The first step that was taken by the Republican president when UPND got into power was the passing of Gazette Notice number 1123, which you must read. Okay? Gazette Notice number 1123 was designed to ensure that the Anti-Corruption Commission, the FIC, the Anti-Money Laundering, the Drug Enforcement Commission and the Anti-Money Laundering Unit, were all reporting to the presidency. We raised this issue not only on the floor of the House, but anywhere else. We said, look, for us, this is not well intended. And this is going to destroy the fight against corruption.
Wasn't it the case under the PF government?
It wasn't.
Are you sure?
That's why they passed the Gazette Notice 1123. Okay?
Right.
But even if it was a bad venture, the very fact that the UPND campaigned on the platform of fighting corruption as a number one priority, that move itself, if they dared to repeat what the Patriotic Front did, destroy the fight against corruption under the UPND government. Okay, because look, the presidency, and this is the argument I've made, the presidency is a fountain of justice in any country. If you're going to say that investigative wings are going to operate independently, you should never suggest directly or indirectly that in that independent functioning, they should be filing a report to the presidency. In fact, the going culture within even the SADC area is that these institutions actually report to the National Assembly. They are accountable to Parliament, which is a people's representative. Then they're directly accountable to the people. Okay? And also, it is because the biggest check that the investigate, the anti-corruption drive is supposed to give is the executive. It's most likely for executive, the executive is more prone to abuse their authority because they deal directly with the treasury. They deal directly with the activities that drive government. They're actually the drivers of government. So you can't then create investigative wings and suggest by a government notice, gazette rather, that they should be reporting to the presidents. We pleaded that, look, let them begin to operate independently. That didn't happen. We have now been proved right. This is a third trends report that has been issued by the Financial Intelligence Commission. Third one, we have no report of what happened after the first report was given. We have what happened after the second report was given. This is, I think, the fourth one. You need to correct me. I actually think this is the fourth report since the UPND government came into power. It is now, I think that I saw a statement from State House that now the president expects the LES, investigative wings, to jump into action and begin to investigate. It's too late, Hero.
How is it too late?
Why didn't we do it when the first trends report was produced? Why didn't we do it when the second trends report was produced? Because by then, believe it or not, if anything had happened after the first trends report, we were not going to hear the escalating amounts in the illicit financial flows that are getting out of the country. But this is happening because under watch of this government, nothing is actually happening. We have come to the public and we've argued that it appears that the fight against corruption by the UPND is lopsided. It is basically confined to looking at what those who were in Patriotic Front were in government and those who are associated with the ones who were in government Patriotic Front were doing, and lining them up before the Anti-Corruption Commission, the DEC, and the courts. This is what they think is a fight against corruption. What is happening now, which the trends are producing, is of no value to them in their fight against corruption. And this, I think, for me, is all linked to the fact that that Gazette notice, it actually was calculated to create some amount of fear in how the SEC and DEC are going to conduct their affairs. I think that if the president wanted to demonstrate that he is very serious and he accords zero tolerance to the fight against corruption, I think what he should do, even today, is to reverse Gazette Notice number 1123, but also probably make some structural changes in the appointment of the people that are sitting in these institutions now. Because how can it be that the trends keep increasing and nothing is happening? It simply means we are not fighting corruption with the tenacity that we had said we were going to fight it when the new government got into power. So this is the take that we make. But now let's talk about this new company. That you've been talking about. You've actually seen.
First of all, let's talk about the fact that the FIC report that is made public it doesn't have the details. It doesn't tell the name of the company. It can't tell the name of the business or the people involved. But I am made to believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm made to believe that the report that is given to the president and given to investigative wings have the details.
Yes, it's basically in accord with international best practices. At the time you are doing what are called trends. Okay, you don't disclose to the public because you jeopardize the investigation.
That's right.
You alert the people that are being investigated.
That's right.
Alert because this corruption doesn't happen, in void. Corruption happens between what are called consent parties. There are some people that may have been implicated in those transactions.
Right.
Whose position you may jeopardize if you disclose it to the public.
Right.
But what happens is this is supposed to be like a relay. The trends report is supposed to be the first report that is supposed to be authored. Then it's supposed to be handed over to the investigative wings, who's supposed to swing into action and begin to pin out the actual individuals that were involved in these transactions. Then it becomes a report then it becomes a matter of actual investigation. Now, an actual investigation does not need to be publicized. jeopardize it. Until you begin to prosecute cases, you must carry out that investigation, professionally and ethically. If people that are mentioned in the trends report can explain themselves, it's like an audit, and you can tick and say, okay, this was an okay transaction, this was then you can let them off. But then you continue until you find the people that are culpable, that are supposed to be investigated and prosecuted. So the trends report that you're seeing is a general indication of where it is going. But what is filed with those whom it may concern, which in my assessment includes the presidency, it does have those details. And when the investigative wings swing into action, those are the trends that actually follow. It makes it easier. In other words,
shouldn't we? There's a ministry involved in that transaction.
Yes.
There's a PS and a minister involved in that transaction.
Yes.
By now we should have, because then the president knows who.
Of course.
And to be investigated, one must be at least given an opportunity to stay away from work and for purposes of investigation.
That's a proper trend to follow. But usually, presidency is a big institution. There are certain factors that lie at the center of the investigation, which with advice, and I hope that those who advise the presidency do it objectively, professionally, and honestly. With advice to the presidency, a decision can be made whether or not to let off that person to go on suspension. But the proper thing to do is to make sure when you see that this person can even interfere with the investigation, but also even the fact that, that office itself look compromised, you need to then ask them to go on leave, at least for the period of investigation. In drastic cases where you are convinced that an offense has been committed, you can even remove them. Allow them to the investigation to actually take place.
Let's now discuss the company, because you wanted to discuss the company.
Well,
so
I think
does it raise eyebrows?
I'll discuss it in principle because I don't want to jeopardize the investigation. But quite frankly, if you have a company that is created, so many months, just a few months before they are awarded a contract, and the company is single sourced, you must begin to ask yourself questions. What is the capacity of that company? What competences are they coming with to come and do that transaction? Why would they be picked on basis? Because our public procurement demands that there must be open tenders and there must be this transparency demonstrated. When somebody is going to be given a contract as big as $21 million, but when it happens in such fashion, it must raise eyebrows. And the $21 million is not a small amount. It will be very visible even at State House. Immediately it's done. I think the opportunity was lost at that time for the presidency to interfere and say you can't do such a thing. But to have allowed it to have actually taken place, to have even been executed to an extent where 5.6 was given, I think for me it shows lack of seriousness in the fight against corruption, as we were told it's going to be the case when they were campaigning. You can't explain that a company can be allowed to do what they've done, and it's just a new company. Like I said, this is not the first time. There were also issues in the previous FIC reports of how fertilizer transactions were given on a single sourcing basis to companies that were not capable of producing and were not capable of supplying. So for me, there's this justifiable threat that when it comes to dealing with corruption, which is taking place currently, this government is paying a blind eye to it. And once you begin to do that, you actually create enemies amongst the state, even amongst the citizens, because citizens now begin to judge you, with lack of seriousness on the fight against corruption. But now, look, it's too late. This company has already been given, somebody has to come and explain why this company was given $5.6 million when they're not able to deliver on a contract of $21 million. And $21 million for a country that is struggling, like we are struggling, as you pointed out. We have actually asked donors to help us, to deal with the drought.
The hunger situation,
the hunger situation that has been given, that has arisen because of drought. Even where the donors are sitting, to come and hear that this country, which is asking us to help them financially, have transactions of this nature that can't be properly explained to the public. Even donors will cringe in their seats. They will think we're not children that we can be asked to go and assist people that who they themselves are seeing these clearly corrupt transactions taking place and they're not doing anything about it. So I think that if this government is serious today, let's use this case. Somebody put this information in the public deliberately because they know that this government is probably going to protect this transaction. Now that it's come to the public, this government is being challenged to show that they're very serious with the fight against corruption by ensuring that whoever was involved in this transaction is brought to book and publicly so that people can be shown an example that this government is very serious about the fight against corruption. Yes.
This is the Thursday edition of the Burning Issue. My guest is Honourable George Chisanga, a Member of Parliament for Lukasha constituency, and he is the Chairperson of the Patriotic Front Legal Committee. Now, the 9 MPs that were expelled from Parliament have obtained a stay, and of course, we do also understand that, meaning that this will now become a legal matter in the courts of law. But what does that do to members of parliament? Is this relief, or it gives them even more headaches?
Well, the process that I must also clarify myself, because I'm leading the legal team that has taken this matter up in court.
Right.
So I will speak in a way that I don't stray into areas of contempt of court.
That's right.
But what has happened is that these 9 members of parliament, feeling aggrieved with what transpired, decided to challenge the matter before the High Court to have the decision of the second deputy speaker examined by the court judicially, and a determination to be made if that decision was appropriate and was valid and was supported by the law, because they feel that what transpired was not supported by the law. So the process that you use to challenge that is going by what is called judicial review before the High Court, a judge. So we filed an application for leave. Leave is basically seeking permission from the court that we would like to file a challenge to the decision that was made by the second deputy speaker, because it needs to be reviewed and examined for appropriateness, and a determination must be made if it's not appropriate to cancel it. There's a term in law which is called certiorari, basically to quash and cancel and make it ineffective. But we also felt that there were compelling reasons why this matter must be preceded by what is called a stay. A stay is basically getting an equitable relief from court, saying that while we are challenging that decision that was made by the speaker or the second deputy speaker, his decision must be rendered ineffective, so that the position returns to what it was before the decision was made. And that allows the members of parliament to occupy their seats in parliament and continue to participate, representing their people who elected them, at least until the court makes a determination of whether the decision by the deputy speaker to declare those vacancies was irrational and illegal, and therefore must be suspended, must be set aside. So that's the process that we've taken. It's supported by the law, and graciously, when we appeared before the court felt they were demonstrated the compelling reasons and granted that stay. So the people of Shwangandu, the people of Lukasha, the people of Mporokoso, the people of Lunte, the people of Chilubi, the people of Mukoshi and North and others, and Kamfinsa, must rest assured now that the MPs are back in the office, albeit on a temporary basis, until the court makes a determination of whether this decision by the speaker must be maintained or vacated. I can't speak to the merits of the case because I'm the lawyer representing these individuals. In all fairness, we will leave it to the court to mete out justice that is this case demands.
Well, interesting. Now, we spoke about the fact that we're going to touch on food security.
Yes.
Right? We partly touched it, but
yes.
But let's talk about it. I mean, is this something that we can still manage locally? Do we need to ask for donors to donate, food relief, like the president did?
Yes.
I'm asking this question because this country has done it before under Manawasa.
Yes.
When Manawasa rejected yellow maize, which should have come here, he says, no, we'll make sure no one dies because we have a capacity to produce maize, and hence the winter maize production.
That's right.
Could we have learned something, and could we have still implemented that, minus going to the international community for help?
I'll tell you the truth. I pride myself with having worked with Mr. Manawasa at that time. When we had a drought situation. In fact, that time, if you remember, Nevas Mumba, who was a very close colleague of mine, was vice president. I had the fortune of working for a regional bank at that time, at PTA Bank, when we heard that Mr. Manawasa had rejected yellow maize, and hunger was looming in the nation. Working with other stakeholders, including the Minister of Agriculture at that time, we structured the transaction as PTA Bank in Nairobi, where we mobilized $20 million, that we then used to procure maize. That maize, most of it was procured from East Africa. And we averted hunger because quite frankly, President Mwanawasa had justifiable reservations to make about yellow maize. Nothing was known very much at that time about GMO maize. And as a president who felt for the people that had given him the privilege of being president, he had resolved he wasn't going to endanger any single life in the country. And with those considerations, he reached out to the president then at PTA Bank, who then assigned me and two other colleagues, and we put together a package that mobilized $20 million that we used to procure maize on a 90 days credit facility. Then, of course, he was then able to bring in the issue of winter maize, which helped us to avert hunger. What we are faced with right now, is hunger again, which is self-induced. I don't want to question the decision of the president to declare hunger, a national disaster. Although personally, I think that we could have avoided it for various reasons, including the fact that maybe we shouldn't even have declared, hunger as a national disaster. We have sufficient maize within the northern enclave in Mchinga, in Luapula, and in northern province. I was there and I went to areas where my farmers, who are of course subsistence farmers, were saying, look, we've got so much maize, we just don't know how to take it today, because the depots were very far. And then business briefcasemen had hedged themselves between FRI and the farmers, and they're buying this maize and storing it. And the story of briefcase businessmen, they will make money out of this misfortune. I think that the lessons we need to learn from the problems that we're facing is to become honest with ourselves and have an honest discussion or conversation as a nation. It is now very clear that the northern part of this country has a potential of becoming a food basket. The only thing they would need is massive support from government. Can you imagine that we have produced the maize we've produced now, even when government support has not been as effective? If you heard the stories in the last two farming seasons, there was a story of medaz, fertilizer being shared in medaz, but still more, even in the midst of that kind of disturbance. And then there was, I think, fertilizer which was substandard. So we had fertilizer in medaz, we had substandard fertilizer, but people were able to produce sufficient to feed themselves, and even to export. When I was in Kasama, I was being told those trucks I was seeing that were collecting maize were bringing it directly here for milling. They're not even storing it in FRA sheds. And that's how much maize they have in Kasama right now. So if we have to learn lessons, we have to agree as government that we are going to give enough FISP support to northern province and Mchinga province, even Luapula province, where the rain patterns are still very favorable to the nation. This is nothing about segregation or anything. It is just being pragmatic about how do we resolve the problem of maize shortages. We did it under Patriotic, for instance, between 2018 and 2019. It can actually be done by this government if indeed they intend to ensure that we still continue to be food secure. Whether or not this is going to be done, quite frankly, it depends on what government itself is going to do. Yes, but we can learn lessons. If we don't learn lessons from what we're going through, we are doomed to fail even next time. And this is the story of hunger, being with us for the longest time. It's going to stay with us. We need to just be pragmatic. We need to know exactly how to handle these situations. You talk about how the government has responded to. There's been this concern Zambians have raised about why did you sell maize that you found in the storage, in the strategic reserves that you had? Firstly, there was no direct answer. The Minister of Agriculture had made a declaration that it is their policy to be selling maize because, according to them, they had sufficient maize to feed the people. Nobody was going to starve. We are now starving. Okay, people are still asking the same question. This question now has elicited very different answers depending on which minister who is answering them. The minister, of infrastructure, of all people, suggested to the nation that we sold maize because we had nothing, we had nowhere to store it. Okay, Mrs. Kasanda, when she was the minister at that time, she said we had sufficient maize, that's why we're selling the maize that we're selling. The vice president now has given us two positions. First, she says we have never sold maize. Okay, when it was all too clear that maize was being sold. And now she's come up and turned around and said, look, actually maize was sold by the private sector. For us as FRI, as government, rather, we sold it to private sector and private sector then sold it. Now, this has even opened more controversy in terms of the public reaction to what government is explaining. So this government must even come to the public with a consistent position of what clearly happened in the sale of this maize. And if this starvation of the Zambian people is caused by them, because you saw a few clips recently, even in Mazabuka, people were queuing up for mini meal. In Chipata, people were queuing up for mini meal. Elsewhere on the Copper Belt, people were rioting for mini meal. The government must be bold enough to come and say, look, we made a mistake. Yes, we found maize in the reserves and we sold them. We saw that maize. Of course, now the stories that, in fact, the stories they have to contend with right now is the people on the ground are now beginning to say, oh, okay, so yeah, they might deal. You know, because now it appears that they must have been their preferred businessmen, you know, who then came and were given permits to export maize. And they're the ones who definitely bought this maize off FRA and exported it for a profit. Now, who has suffered? The Zambian people are the ones who have suffered. So for me, rather than getting these inconsistent explanations that we are getting currently from government, the government must be bold enough to come and tell us as a people that there were fundamental mistakes that were made in the maize marketing in 2022, 2023, and we are facing this hunger now because of the mistakes that we made, and I apologize to the people. Apart from that, they must now prescribe how we're going to go forward, you know, in dealing with the future maize production and maize marketing as a nation, so that we can remain food secure. The PF was not foolish to have kept stocks that were in storage for all that period. In fact, even the president, when he was in opposition, he had suggested that you can store maize for 2 to 3 years before you sell it. But he flipped when he went into government and started saying, no, but we had to sell because you can't store maize, you know, for a long time to go to waste. Are not helping the people to understand clearly where the government is taking them. So there are two things this government must come and do. First, it must come and apologize of how it is that we've ended up without maize, because they sold this maize at the time when they should have actually kept it in the reserves for people to utilize. Secondly, this government must come clear on what policy are they going to have in agriculture now. We have been pleading with them, for instance, if you see they are trying to diversify FISP. I think that this quest to diversify FISP is not informed by adequate consultation of stakeholders. I think they must allow FISP to remain on the books until they've had adequate consultation with stakeholders before they introduce the new system that they're bringing in. You know, I know they cannot disclose it, but I'm very convinced that the new system is actually being informed or demanded on them by the IMF conditionalities, that they must move away from FISP. We're not a country that can move away from subsidizing maize production. We can't. We have proved for years that when you subsidize maize production, the production itself and the marketing of maize allows you to claw back some of the money that you may have spent in subsidizing. We just needed to fine-tune that process and ensure that it becomes a process where people graduate after some time, but also those who remain on it are supposed to be tied into it completely, so that when they produce, at least the first party that's going to purchase that maize will be government itself. Then we are going to be food secure, but we're also going to expand capacity amongst the small-scale farmers, especially who benefit from a FISP. So even now, as a member of parliament for Lukasha constituency, which is an agrarian constituency, because 80% of what the activities that happen in my constituency is agriculture. So I know what I'm talking about. I've spoken to camp officers, I've spoken to chiefs, I've spoken to the farmers themselves. They've pleaded that, look, we know that this government is about to diversify FISP, but if they're going to do it without adequate consultation, there's going to be a perpetual problem of food insecurity in the country. So they need to get back to the people. You can't govern a country without consultation. Go to the people, find out from them what is on the ground. Listen to experts. Let them give you ideas of how you can maintain people on FISP and make sure we increase food production and expand capacities for small-scale farmers who contribute more than 40% of the food basket in a year.
Now, before I invite callers, I have one item that I would like you to comment on, if you feel like. I know it's an issue that obviously is in court, but we would like to get your learned mind on it. I mean, the fact that Concord ruled that, the case of ECL's eligibility was sent to a full trial before a single constitutional court judge.
Yes.
Your thoughts around this matter?
Yeah, first, just to clarify for the people to know exactly is going to pan out.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of misinformation about what has transpired.
Yeah.
Others have even gone to the extent that the court has said Edgar Lungu is not eligible.
Yeah.
And everything. And
Quite a lot.
Others have raised a very interesting, jurisdiction being raised by non-lawyers. I think it's very central jurisprudential, because the question that somebody asked me, Honourable, what would happen if the court says that Edgar Lungu was not eligible to stand in 2021?
eligible?
And I was like, I scratched my think around that issue.
I got those questions. I asked some people.
Yeah.
I get a lot of different answers that are saying, well, there's nothing that would be done to that.
The position would be that even that election itself was a nullity because one of them who was contesting did not qualify. You can't have a non-qualifying candidate participating in the election. But anyway, I don't want to answer that question. It's so remote. But let me tell you what. First, I need to clarify for the public to know that the court has not made any decision on eligibility at this juncture.
That's right.
What they have said is that we have dealt with this case so many times. This case has been dealt with 4 times before. This is, I think, the 5th time we're going back to court. People are going back to court. But they've decided that there are some issues that were raised by both parties, the petitioner and also the respondent, that they think they'll need to examine as a full court before making a determination. Okay, so they said we are going to have this matter and hear it as a full court. But what people have heard, which is not correct, is that the court has referred it to a single judge to hear. A single judge of a constitutional court can't hear this case, which had been decided before so many times by the full bench. So it's a full bench which will hear this matter, but a single judge will just call the parties up to appear for what is called the status to agree how they're going to prosecute that matter and then indicate to them when the full court is going to hear this matter. Regarding what will happen during that, and it's not the first time that the court has referred, even before, there had been an attempt to try and oust this matter on a preliminary issue. The court guided that, look, they will still want to hear the parties and they will make a determination on that matter even before. But I was examining this case and I was asking myself a question: what novel issues are going to arise in this court? Because, there are principles of law that guide the courts in ensuring that justice has a flair of quality. And there are principles of stare decisis, judicial precedent, and and res judicata. These are technical principles of law that says, you can't litigate on the same matter more than once. Once the court makes a decision, it's a final decision. But I don't know what kind of dynamism.
But the court has never made a decision on his eligibility, no?
Oh, but it has. It has. It made a decision in Danny Pule and the Attorney General, where it actually says, and I've explained this so many times, the court has explained that somebody who finds himself in a position where Edgar Lungu found himself at that time should not be disqualified from participating in an election which actually should be his second attempt. Because under the, Dr. Lungu had, I don't call it a misfortune, but he had, what transpired during his presidency is that he was elected as president under an old constitutional order, which had a system of transition and which had its own limitations of how many times somebody can be elected. Okay. And after that, as he was sitting in the office of president, the constitutional order changed. We had a new constitutional order. Okay. And the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court had to address itself to what happens when somebody, finds himself in those, for lack of a better term, unfortunate circumstances.
Yes.
But when they had to make a final determination, they said, look, you cannot fault him, because under the new constitutional order, a person who served, which was even the case under the old constitution, a person who serves in the office of a president less than 2 years should not have that period credited to his presidency to determine
as a full term.
Yes, to determine a full term. Only if you served 3 years and above. Okay.
All right.
And Dr. Lungu clearly had served, I think, about less than 24 months after President Sata passed on. And the determination that in 2021, he would be eligible to contest that election. I dated, I think, ZNBC and spoke about it, dated even this station and spoke about it before. I'm looking at the Constitutional Court on how they are going to determine this matter. I think after Danny Pule, there was even Bumpy Kaparasa and another case. There are 3 cases that came to court on the same issue, and the Constitutional Court was very consistent that this person was eligible. So this question is going to be tabled before them for the 3rd or 4th time to make a determination. Applying the principles of law that we learn in law school, applying the principles of law that are applicable in jurisdictions, one begins to wonder how they're going to traverse, the complexity or the complexities of judicial precedent, res res judicata, and other principles that are implicated in what's going to happen. But I would rather leave it to the court to make that determination. But the only point I wanted to make is that this matter has been litigated before, and the Constitutional Court has pronounced itself clearly on the issue of eligibility. But this time around, they thought that they should take it to a full court again to make a determination. It uniquely, I read so much on law. It happened even in the case of United States, where there's a celebrated case, I think it's Roe versus Secretary of State, where Good Marshall, who was a lawyer at that time, was made to argue the same case twice. But contrary to the expectation, he argued this case at the time when the race relationships were very hot in America. So there was that case of young children who were not allowed to go to school because the school was predominantly white. And he went to court and raised the issue that this is segregation on account of race. He argued that case. The court made deliberations. They were about to make a determination, and they discovered, no, we need to hear this matter. So the court was meant to convene the second time, and he presented the same argument. The court came back with the same decision. So I'm looking at, like I said, with a lot of curiosity on how our court is going to determine this matter, because this is an issue that has already been dealt with. The misfortune with this country, Zach, is that we put people in the law. We put individuals in the law, and now we put even officers in the law. We begin to think about this individual and where he's sitting relative to the office, and begin to think that even the law must be twisted to just fit, what this individual is trying to put in, and that does create problems. And I hope that the courts are not going to be carried by the whirlwind and be part of this drama that goes around, because people maybe they don't like the face of this individual, and therefore they must use the law to deal with him. We can't run a country on that basis. I have argued that what keeps this country united as a united country is first the Constitution itself, and secondly, a legal system that is consistent, that is uniform, but also judges who are brave, who are accountable only to one thing. The judges are accountable only to the law and to the Constitution. Once we know that these are the basic principles upon which we operate as a society, we cannot create any confusion and chaos in society.
Do you anticipate, depending on the outcome of this particular case, change the political dynamism?
You want me to be arrested? Well, I think that we need to be alive to the environment in which we are operating.
Right.
And judges are not the exception. We are operating in an environment that can swing from being as peaceful as calm water to volatility as a volcano.
But also
we need to avoid that I always use a term that Martin Luther King Jr. used once upon a time. He said, you see, at a time, society is called to reason together as brothers and sisters to avoid calamities, or to perish together as fools if you don't reason. I mean, society must reason.
But can you also clarify the fact that the earlier case, like you mentioned, was only adjudicated by 7 judges?
Yes,
all right, and now it's a full bench, which is 13 judges, and people are saying anything is possible.
Well, for me, precedent is precedent. Of course, you can part from precedent, but there must be compelling reasons why you must part from precedent. And also, principally, you don't part precedent using the same case that you've already decided. You don't. You part from precedent using a different case that comes under a different environment because circumstances have changed. Those who have learned, I'm teaching now, those who have learned civil law will tell you that under negligence, there used to be a law where, Hyde and Park was a different decision. When it came to Donoghue and Stevenson, because of changing circumstances, the court decided to part from old principle and enunciate a new principle. That then responds to the environment that has changed. If the environment has not changed, there's no need for you to depart from a precedent that you already established for yourselves, regardless of the number of judges who are going to sit. And that's my take on it. But I'm not speaking for the judges. All I will ask is that the judges must know what they're accountable for. They must know that they're calling cause for brevity. But most importantly, now that we're in a constitutional setup, they must know that they are also sovereigns. If they realize that they are sovereigns and that they discharge a sovereign function as when they are sitting as a judicature, then they know how they're going to direct their minds. I am a sovereign in Parliament. When I'm sitting where I'm sitting, I sit representing all the people in Lukasha constituency, those who voted for me, those who didn't vote for me, because the constitution clothes me with the authority of being a sovereign. And me, combined with others, including the speaker, we form the legislature. We are actually a sovereign unit in the country, just like the presidency. The single sovereign that we've got in this country is the presidency, because Zambians directly voted for the president and gave him the mandate to run the affairs of the nation for the next 5 years. So he is a sovereign where he's sitting on his own, just like the judges sitting as a composite group are also a sovereign. Once we realize these basic principles of living in a society, believe it or not, we will continue to be a thriving example of democracy, not only in SADC, but elsewhere within Africa.
Well, this is the Thursday edition. Phone calls now on the Happy World of 5 FM radio. Remember, we are also live on our partner radio stations, Tuta FM, iWave FM, Muchinga Radio, Spice FM, and we're live on our Facebook page. That's 5 FM Radio Zambia. So we'll take phone calls on 0955 221515. Let's take this one. Good morning. We'll take another one on 0955 221515. Welcome to the burning issue. Good morning, and welcome to the burning issue. I'm very well, thank you. Your name and where you're calling us from, and I'm giving you a minute.
Yes. My name is Elvis. I'm calling within Lusaka. Good morning, Honourable Chisanga.
Elvis, good morning, sir. How are you today?
Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
You have explained very well.
Thank you.
We are okay, but we are suffering hunger. Njala bachitanga njala. Izatipaya njala. You see, I was very surprised with the decision of the Honourable Speaker,
yes, sir,
who expelled 9 MPs from Parliament. You see, this is baffling and surprising to Zambians, because the UPND to me is already gone.
Yeah.
The slogan is hashtag Kabale Abamu 2026.
Yeah.
You know, these were the last kicks of a dying horse.
Yeah.
When the UPND was coming into power, it promised the people of Zambia to abide by the law. They said we are going to uphold the democracy.
Yeah.
And this democracy they are talking about today has gone to the dogs, Chisanga. If you can see, the PF was even better than the UP, allowed opposition to thrive on the but with this failed government of President Zachariah, UPND to me has inflicted more pain on the people of Zambia. This is a government which came through deceit, lies, to tell the people that they are going to lower the cost of living, they are going to make sure that the dollar comes down, they are going to make sure that milling is cheap. Everything they promised, including road shedding. In 2018, President Zachariah, when in opposition, said the issue of water cannot stand because we have seen that it is poor leadership which is there. Is this the poor leadership we are experiencing from him today? When he has failed to even deliver on the promises which he promised to the people of Zambia. Yes. This intolerant government, Chisanga, to me, you are one of the pillars of this country, especially you PFMPs.
Yes.
Those giants they removed from Parliament, Bazat.
Yes.
Bena Mundovire, Kango, Kamutotwe Kafuaya, you Chisanga, and this Kangombe.
Yes.
These are the most vocal and the most people who are giving checks and the balances. Some of these MPs in the PF have never uttered any word in Parliament. Bambi Karafeti Ondoro. Umura Duakweba Tibareti, Nabareti, Yanaba, UPND. We can mention them here.
Thank you.
We don't
Thank
want
you,
to
Elvis.
mention them.
Thank you,
So,
Elvis.
what we are Bazaki, the conclusion.
Your time is up.
Chisanga, Pitiri Sheni, Ba Edi Galungu, Tureva Tungiria Pakabake, Minine 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
take another one on 0955 221515. That's the number you're calling us on. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Welcome to the burning issue. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Good morning, Wazaki. Good morning, Honourable.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
We are talking to King Madidoa, DIPS, doing Madidoa, the Patriotic Front.
Okay, I'm quiet. I came for the militia. I'm quiet.
So we know Kanavi saying Saraf, Sarashera, Tupa Makumboni, Ramara, Yama Baba, Shavutua Quata,
twalisala pamulamba malaiti vale tutushavo vakaramba ndofokusha kuri vetembe munairesa security pamidzi kuti vahaijina vasinyisha vamaforeigners kusapotesi ova munagwagwa ye vamusaira zisadiki chiyamani lomba kufema zambiani ngatofa kusapotesi vareperesha vena maforeigners sedi vaashire protest kumacampus kumyavo vale fokusira protest muno muzambia is for getting echechati munagwagwa hairesa kurasha nokwalomba support military kusati aitifendeka muzambia adeni mune nitastikena kura ukwalirayo timani adengere tumuna maprotesting lomba kula munagwagwa ngatanga kula tumemishinga kushaba kachulia mune wananke mazambia tukachulia muvena tava kachulia izao going to save from Amazon muna muleta mbone mwata munagwagwa rigia marasheni kushebe na vaesheshi fiato tware muna kuma southern praise muntu afe kunu makwachi mutatambo kula chonga mavuta zikadi kapokola musenga sedamu katare mwe bativokesha mavuta that is not a rigging wena vale fa kosha ava navo that is that feel to kana filana mazambian and lastly I just want to appreciate how you had created the constitution legibit of our former president Lukasha.
That's right.
What they are forgetting the UPN is that Wajira Chagarungu serves under two different constitutions, and each constitution says that umuntu tete minyaka number 3. And then ya face itali na temu neza ni 21 months safi ne mulandira. And then constitution ya nyuani ai minine mufekamo. So ile muntu mnishoku mina na number 3. Numbo wase wapo wali shwati ngani umuntu wakesa tuwena. If president church is enough, let him allow Chagarungu to stand in 2026 to come on that mwa metachi nga mwa metachi nakawina. That is how democracy should be. That fude to alanda chawe mwe bantu newo inefu wakuteka kama abantu bafire basara omuntu wakuteka not if vale fokusa ba HH chakulanda sana.
Thank you.
Thank you again for that.
0955-221515 is the number you're calling us on, and let's take this other one. Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Fine, thank you. Your name and where you're calling us from?
This is Chris calling you from Mpulungu.
Chris from Mpulungu.
Yes.
How is Mpulungu?
Good morning, Honourable.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm okay.
Zaki is asking how Mpulungu is. I'm sure.
Mwalidi Masana.
Mpulungu is okay, despite right, so.
But now we saw Mbola Febwino. Emquay.
I think in Zambia, no politics to be a way. There are more politics today. I like to swallow quasi Patan. Tirenga for the motor from Panama. Was no being a reader. Not about the issue of his wife. Kuvarida kurashita criticize munove chakurati munove ngafuma pamutunguru chiveniyo avapo then wambo kurashita kompea if yashitire uyatashitire uino inenge achitefyaso. That's not being a good leader. Inofana ichiva leader wamano leader musumo wasikapo zachikuta konzauti ichetu tinachitashani apa twala ngatuamba kuvomesho nichicharo chesu chazanda charayakunyikanji but now mapolitician mwentunguru chesu novotete kukuntanji ikeni shakwevati muleke ishakulasontanelino lekeni tuvombesa kutwala icharo chesu kuntanji notishakwevati nefwayo kuva pachipuna kuti once you go there with an agenda of ngaepeshauya ifwe icharo chesu chakula pancha because we will be always working ukupesha vari abantu iseti yakutira tire tware charo chesu pantu kalavo mbera kuva against with a certain group of individuals chalarenge charo chesu kulavorera kunuma ikemwe wentunguru chesu vambo kufunyapo segregation mwandu namapolitical parties kulingana hayi difference over CF difference over nani. We work for Zambia. We don't work for PF. We don't work for UPNG. Let us work for the people who voted for you in power. awe ukamona uko tikaya ikabuke nkondo efwe bakabuke nkondo Museveni for especially in politician our political leaders. Thank you very much.
Natotera sana mkwe.
Twatasha mbaposheko mkwai kumpulungu.
Thank you very much.
Great. Maybe I give you an opportunity to respond.
Yes.
Be brief,
Very
and then
brief,
we
because,
can.
I mean, I think the two, Elvis and Kimford, have spoken about the same thing.
That's right.
About. I mean,
That's
the
right.
idea of wanting to ensure that democracy thrives is what is very important. Of course, on the issue of the speaker, I did explain I think in detail. I just want to seize an opportunity for what Chris has said on the issue of democracy. You see, we there's a point that we should have spoken about how the democratic space is continuing to reduce, even if our colleagues are refusing. You know, yesterday the young men who wanted to protest
against ZESCO,
ZESCO, and they had been engaging ZESCO even before. And when they noticed that ZESCO was not coming forth to resolve the issues, they thought, look, we need to make a statement to the public. Some of them have slept in custody this night. They're not the only ones. There are some youths that had come to try and protest the ejection of 9 members of parliament in parliament. What is very unique with those youths, for me, and this is why I want to send a message to the Minister of Home Affairs and by extension to the President. What is unique with those youths is that they don't actually belong to any political party. The ones who are demonstrating yesterday and the ones who are demonstrating, you know, when at the time that they wanted to come and demonstrate the expulsion of those.
Although allegations are that they were sponsored by the Socialist Party.
Allegations. And see, what for me made my heart feel very aggrieved is what the police tried to do after the fact. You know, these young men had wanted to come and just register their disagreement with what had transpired on the floor of the House when the Speaker made an unconstitutional decision. They had the right to do that. When they were arrested, which was also wrong, because you don't arrest people that are exercising their constitutional rights, the police now tried to smear them with further accusations and said that they were linking them to some kind of offenses that were taking place in Chawama, and they were holding them as they continue to investigate those cases. That I found was totally unacceptable, totally wrong, but also just intended to, it appears the police has an agenda of making sure that there is not going to be any public outcry against this government if it makes mistake, because once they arrest you, like they have done with JJ, you know, they get a person who's abducted, they put him in custody and then begin to look for offenses that are supposed to tie to him. They've repeated that with the boys that they arrested, and they claim that they were the ones who means to behave like this. They are going to steer people against the government. I think the police must act professionally. If those kids were arrested because they came to demonstrate, usually what the police do is they must just keep them away from the area where they're supposed to be demonstrating and disperse them from there. They go back home. Because demonstrating, like I said, is not a crime. But in this country now, for the first time when you demonstrate, you end up groups of youths who are unstructured, and you begin to is treating them now, you are actually going to increase their population. They are going to become more discontented. And once they get onto the ground, even you police, whatever happened in Kenya is going to happen even here. We need to avoid that at all costs by being civil. We need to avoid all that by being professional, but also not accusing citizens of offenses they didn't commit as a reason to keep them confined in custody, because the president had made an pronouncement before that if somebody has not committed an offense, don't keep them in custody. If someone has committed an offense, charge them, arrest them when you know that the offense has been committed. How can you justify as a police? I heard Dan Mwale make a statement, you know, and I even called him. When they say that we're now keeping them because of the offenses they may have committed, that is actually violating the instruction that were given to them by the president. Because then you're holding citizens on an offense that you don't even know whether they committed. What about if you find that they're not the ones who committed those offenses? But all that is intended to make sure that people demonstrate against this government if they're dissatisfied with what government is doing. Kimford has made a very alarming remark. I don't want to react to it because I don't have facts. Okay, that the foreigners are being allowed to protest. I just want to echo what the Minister of Foreign Affairs said on the floor of the House, that the issue of the utterances made by Mr. Mnangagwa dealt with through diplomatic channels. And if that is the position, then there will be no basis for the government here allowing citizens who are in fact not locals to demonstrate against him no longer. But I hope to God that this is not the truth, because I know that we are sitting with an assurance from the Minister of Foreign Affairs that the issues to do with the relationship between Zambia and Zimbabwe is going to be dealt with through diplomatic channels. The eligibility, I think, is made the point. The most important point that has been made by Chris from Mpulungu is that we need to remind ourselves that we are Zambians. Zambia is not Patriotic Front and UPND. In fact, I must extend to say, but Zambia is not HH and ECL. Zambia is Zambia. We are a composite group of different people coming from different backgrounds, but all who share the same destiny as the nation. We need to get to a stage where we can begin to engage each other as Zambians. And this means we must respect each other. We must respect our coexistence. We must respect our, divergency. But most importantly, we must all be brought together because we are so fortunate to be called citizens and residents of this Republic of Zambia.
Let me take some more calls on 0955-221515. Our guest this morning is Honourable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament for Lukasha constituency, and he is the chairperson for the Patriotic Front Legal Committee. Right. So the numbers that you are calling us on is 0955-221515. Good morning.
Correct. The admin, Wale Mutembo, George Compound representing. So, Honourable, there you are concreting issues very nicely, and I want to applaud you. You must continue speaking on behalf of the Zambians. Comrade, the hardships that you are passing through as the people of George Compound are unprecedented. Because, comrade, never in my wildest of dreams did I ever thought that under Mr. Hakainde Hichilema would be seeing what you are seeing. Comrade, the people today are lining up for millennium, something which is 100 years backward. Comrade, we are dealing with a man who said, when in opposition, to say that me, when I become president, I'm going to be around people to be demonstrating and for people to be paying solidarity to their leaders when they are called upon at the High Court. Comrade, did you see what happened 24 hours ago at the High Court? The High Courts were besieged by military men armed to the tooth. Something that we have never seen, comrade. Comrade, don't you think we are under dictatorship? Because according to democracy, what we learned in social studies in grade 7 is that democracy means people's power. Democracy is the government of the people. But if people cannot be aroused to rule themselves by protesting, then where are we going? So in conclusion, I want to say that we must continue talking. We must not be cowed down or intimidated, because the moment that we are going to be cowed down, we will not have Zambia to talk about. Thank you very much. I submit Nampia Mobile.
Thank you very much.
I've got a message here that says, Zach, good morning. One, PF fired the woman for publishing the report. I think this is the FIC issue. And UPND has welcomed it, and the president has told police and other investigative arms of government to actually do their job. Secondly, the fight for PF presidency started before UPND was in government. Third, President Lungu in 2015 was elected by few people instead of everyone, according to the party constitution, just like what Maize Sampa did. Why complain? 4, those 9 MPs are gone, right? Those 9 MPs are gone because of your arrogance. It's just a matter of time. And lastly, continue comforting yourselves as Patriotic Front. Soon you will be history, because I'm seeing even ECL losing his appetito of standing. I think he meant appetite of standing in 2016. This is Kakoma in Kamwala, Kamwala South here in Lusaka. It will be important that you probably quickly and briefly address those, but let's take another call. Good morning.
Yeah, but mwa ukabwanji mwa sevenza bwanje.
Bwino mule bwanje.
Na ifetia mika mulungwati sunga wanzatu wali mumamochari. Judgment day kama yo stumbeko kuno kwa kanyama. Wali bwanji wa Honourable.
Astumbeko mwe bwanje ya mdana.
No, tia mika mulungwati sunga.
Chendi.
Yeah. Niambirire na ya milisi.
Chendi.
Ya milisi na nizi wakuti jamilisi mwenzo tenga chabe kumafamazi sumna wapase ndarama zao. So UPND pamene inabwera inaona kuti babene ba milisi wapasiwe ndarama zao. Ni chamene banagulisira milisi. Then ni bwere ku ya member of parliament bali 9.
Chendi.
Namvera kuti ndimwe ba lawyer. Tieni kiverenge article 72 clause E. Tieni kiverenge article 72 clause E. ikamba chani muverengereko ma Zambians kapena ma members vanu bamene sibaziva clause E
sikuti minayo simungaverenge kwa mdaka
ina nilinayo but nifuna imwe okay bazaki nilole kuti niverenge
Yeah.
Expelled from the member for election for the National Assembly.
Just read that again.
Apa imini ngakuti vamayo sampa vanatosa vantu vanaimirira pa ticket ya chini chavo. Not speaker.
I was asking if you can read that again. I think your line at some point cut. Just read that again. Just read the article. Oh, he's gone, but I have a message here. It says, "Good morning, Zach and the guest, Mr. Chisanga. I'm Mr. Banda from Chainda area within Lusaka. Well, speaking very well. What is currently happening now under the UPND regime is disheartening, and it is a legal lawlessness in itself. The UPND have abrogated many laws in this country, and they don't want to be checked. One example is the parliament itself, which have continued to be a laughingstock in the region. What have gone wrong for Mother Zambia to go through such horrible experience under these angels in the UPND? Anyway, good day and thanks." Well, thank you very much, Mr. Banda, for that. Let's see if we can squeeze in another call. Good morning. Hello.
Francis Mombempika is what is calling you from Lusaka. Good morning to you, Zach.
Francis, you said?
Good morning to you, Honourable. Yes.
Morning,
Francis,
yes.
Be brief. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes. According to my conspectors on today's issue, first and foremost, they say failure is failing to accept the fact that you failed. That is the failure of failure. So this government is saying to accept the fact that they failed to handle certain people of Zambia crying for now. Honourable, continue speaking for the people. It is up to the government. You've been in government before, and they should learn from you people who are out there now to say, when you ignore the people want to protest in a very open manner, no violence, no nothing, let people speak out. Because the moment you start there, like I quote the words of the current president, he said, "A hungry man is an angry man." That was the current president who's there. So he understands these things better than anybody.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we should put Zambia first, whatever we do. And then also, I want to ask you, Honourable, out there, the conversation we had last week of certain people, PS and whatever, concerning Banda's issue. What do you say about that? Do those people deserve to continue being in office, or more investigation should be instituted there? Because that is clear crime that was going on there, what was being discussed there. So, in conclusion, to all Zambians, let us remain peaceful. Let us remember we put Zambia first, but to the current government, don't take the people of Zambia for granted. This time, the constituency called Zambia has been lost by the current government, and you need to do the amends and repairs before you are kicked out of government. That is what is important. Zambia should come first, and we are the people who employ you. Don't think because now you're in government, you can do whatever you think of doing, and don't listen to what people are talking about in this country.
Thank you, Francis.
That is what I have to say for today.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you very much.
I will ask you to react because we are coming to a close.
I think Mutembo made a very clear call, and I just want to thank him. We will continue speaking to the Zambian people. We are doing this, even under very difficult circumstances, but we honor the obligation given to us by Zambians who have voted to speak on behalf of the Zambian people. Okay. Look, he touched on demonstrations that happened at the High Court. I was at the High Court, at the Concourt, the time that Dr. Lungu's case was coming up. This was a very peaceful organization, but what I saw, which I didn't expect to see, was that deployment of a lot of police officers they are coming to quell a riot. I think, for me, we reached a stage now where this government is very afraid of its own people, and it becomes a problem. Government must be endeared by its own people. People must be very excited to hear that the government is managing their affairs. But when government begins to deploy security, to facilities such as the High Court or the Concourt, it tells you how afraid they are about what is likely to happen, and also how the country itself is faring. Mr. Kakoma, I think he must be definitely a UPND follower. I hold views that are completely different from him. He argued that the PF had fired the woman who published the FIC report. Even if I was within PF, I didn't agree with that position. In fact, I criticized the president at that time. That when it is wrong, I'll tell you it is wrong. I told the president when the young lady was fired for producing the trends report, and I said they should not have done that. Okay. The current president. It is not enough to wake up today and say you can now investigate the case or come the report. No, there must be a demonstration that the fight against corruption is going to be taken with the seriousness that it demands. You see, his position is a position of the UPND that those MPs are gone, according to him. Such a dangerous trajectory to make. You can't wake up a constitutional democracy from the comfort of your house and just declare that as far as you're concerned, a person who was voted for by 62,000 people to be in parliament is gone by a mistake made by a speaker on the floor of the house in parliament. I'm not going to devote an answer to that in detail because I've already explained, the position. He has discouraged me from confronting myself as Patriotic Front. I am comfortable because I'm a Zambian. Associate with the political party that I don't associate with. What I would like to ask him, because I know he's UPND, let him just reflect and see how the UPND was allowed to do opposition politics in the country when Patriotic Front was in government. And if we are allowed, the way we are allowed, and if PF is going to be allowed to offer checks and balances, PF is going to live to be there for a long time. But let me make this point, which I've made before so many times. People mistake PF for being a political party. PF is not a political party, Zach, and I say it. You might even be believing others who are saying that PF is dead. PF can't die. PF was a party that endeared itself to the poor, the plight of the poor. The people still remember what Patriotic Front did. Even if you choose to kill it, they will resurrect it. But what has happened so far is not sufficient to kill the Patriotic Front. We are here for as long as forever. Okay, so he said we used to buy maize from the farmers and never paid. The misfortune when you are... I don't want to call him a name, but let me just say, when you don't follow things objectively, you create problems even for your own understanding of what is going on. He says that PF never used to pay for the farmers. I'm sure he's echoing what the minister, I think the vice president said. But the truth is, the Minister of Agriculture, Katambo, made a statement even in Parliament. By the time PF was coming out of power, no farmer had not been paid for maize that they supplied. So that is an untruth. But you see, because it has been extended as an untruth, somebody has grasped it and he thinks it is a truth that PF never paid farmers. The farmers were paid, Mr. Stumbeko, and you need to just check your facts correctly even before, as you continue to support the party which is in power. The MPs, he cited sections Article 72E of the Constitution. I think I'll ask Mr. Stumbeko, without defending our position, to come to the courts when we are hearing these matters, so that he can understand clearly what is provided for in the Constitution. You don't read the provision in the Constitution in isolation. You must read them compositely. You must read one article relative to the other. But because this matter is in court, I want to give him a benefit of explaining to him the consequences of breaching Article 72E of the Constitution. Okay, Mr. Banda, I think, has observed clearly what is happening. But I think there's somebody, Francis has raised an issue relating to Kawana and Mr. Matambo. This government prides itself to be a government of the rule of law. The president twice has come to Parliament and addressed us on values and principles. And he has clearly, elucidated in Parliament that his government is a government of laws. Now Zambians have heard what lies at the center of young man JJ's abduction. Stakeholders have spoken about what's going on. Worse still, an audio has gone viral of the dialogue that Mr. Kawana and Mr. Matambo were having with JJ. I can't divulge some of the confidences that lie at the center of JJ's case because I also had an engagement with JJ, as a friend and as a lawyer. But what I would call upon the president to do is to pay attention to the onerous obligation the Constitution places on the shoulders of a person who sits in the office of a president. So much has gone wrong in this country. There have been so many breaches of the Constitution in this country. There has been so much breach of law by those who patronize the party in power. Is because of lack of justice on the part of a president. I would like the president to read through the provisions of the Constitution and understand how heavy the is and weigh in on some of these things that are wrong and that are happening indicatively without his action. He's remained inactive for a long time. The discussion that Kawana was having with, JJ through, it gives a clear indication of the fact thing fundamentally wrong with how we have handled the case of JJ. He is a perfect person. I'm not even, saying he's a worst person. But when you are in government and there are laws and there are regulations that guide how you should handle who's been accused of committing crimes, and then you place the handling of that individual beneath due process, you condemn him in every way possible, even before he appears in court. And in a bid to try and stem the wrong that was done to him by others, individuals like Kawana show up and begin to engage him in discussions that give clear evidence of the fact that there's interference that is taking place. And this individual, Kawana, patronizes higher officers in government, and the president sits without making a decision. It causes grief to the Zambians. Let me remind you, I worked very closely with Kaiser Zulu the time we were in opposition with Michael Sata. And Kaiser went to work with President Sata, and later on he went to work. Kaiser has done this, and Kaiser has done that, and Kaiser has done this. I made a straight statement one time. I said, Kaiser is a person that I knew personally, is a friend of mine. But the amount of wrongdoing that he was involved in and the perception that was given to the presidency was something that was causing concern in the judging public. And I demanded of the president to please consider dropping Kaiser Zulu. I was last president at that time. I was an active member, although I had gone on leave, of the Patriotic Front at that time, the party that I had worked very hard to build. But I made a call on the president. Not because I didn't like Kaiser, but because I considered the office of president to be very important, that if one of those who patronizes gets associated with certain kinds of conduct, you must allow them to take a leave. And you saw what happened. For me, even those who are around the presidency must be able to advise the current president of how he must just be decisive to deal with some of these issues that we keep raising, not because we don't like the people that are committing wrongs, but we need to preserve the presidency because it's a very important office. The final comment I would like to make, Zach, is just repeat what Francis said. Zambians must remain peaceful. We must continue being peace-loving and loving each other. But most importantly, this government that came through a huge public acclaim into office in 2021 must stop taking Zambians for granted. When you see MPs going through what we're going through right now, when you see youths being prevented from conducting their disagreement with what is going on in government, when you see people in villages not having access to clean water and now not having access to food, and minimum becomes a challenge, and government does not choose to act, then government can be accused of taking its citizens for granted. The government is stewardship. They are accountable to the people who put them in office. They should be decisive in how to deal with matters concerning governance. It is very important. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to speak to you, Zach.
Thank you very much, Honourable, for coming. That was Honourable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament for Lukasha constituency and Chairperson of the Patriotic Front Legal Committee. Thank you very much also to you, our listeners who followed our conversation, and to our partner radio stations in Tuta FM, iWave, Muchinga, Spice FM, as well as those that followed our conversation on Facebook. Thank you very much We will be back next week at the same time with both the Tuesday and Thursday editions of The Burning Issue. From us all is take care of yourselves and more so of each other. Bye-bye.
Five FM Gule Wamkulu.
We seem to be receiving some